So you may have seen some videos from a guy named Steve Cortes. He's a senior advisor to the Trump campaign, and he made a series of videos detailing the Trump campaign's allegations of voter fraud in key battleground states. One of these videos got nearly 2 million views, so we took a look at it here at Breakthrough News to see if there could be any truth to these claims. And, at face value, they almost seem legitimate. I mean, you've got this guy in a shirt and tie. He's throwing a bunch of numbers at you. How could he possibly be lying? But we took a look at the numbers, and it turns out there are three major flaws in his argument. The first thing is he says that the Wisconsin statewide voter turnout is way too high.
In Wisconsin, for example, statewide turnout was over 90%. To put that in context, the country of Australia, voting is mandatory. You get fined if you don't vote, and their turnout is only 92%.
It's actually 73%. So right there, his whole argument goes out the window. It's not abnormally high. The second thing he tries to do is cast doubt on the voter turnout in the city of Milwaukee.
In Wisconsin, Milwaukee was critical. Not surprisingly, that provided more than all of the surplus for Biden in the state. He won Milwaukee by 145,000 votes. Turnout in Milwaukee was a stunning 84%.
He does a really clever sleight of hand here where he inverts the voter turnout in the city and the county of Milwaukee. There are two Milwaukees here, the city and the county, and he inverts the numbers to make it look like the city has higher voter turnout. The actual voter turnout in Milwaukee was 78%, which is only 5 points higher than the Wisconsin statewide numbers. He also tries to cast doubt on the Milwaukee numbers further by comparing it to the city of Cleveland, which is another Midwestern city.
It's pretty hard to believe if you put it in comparison with another Midwestern city, similar demographics, similar size, Cleveland. Turnout was only 51%. Are we really to believe that Milwaukee naturally had turnout that much higher than Cleveland?
But if you look at the county of Cuyahoga, which is the county that Cleveland belongs to, you'll see that the voter turnout there is much higher. It's 16 points higher. And if you look at Milwaukee, you see the same pattern where the county numbers are much higher than the city numbers. So this kind of goes along with the Biden campaign strategy of mobilizing suburban voters. With that strategy, you'd expect counties to have a higher voter turnout than the cities. But the fatal flaw of this argument, of this guy's argument, is when you compare it to the 2016 numbers. He's saying that the turnout in 2020 is abnormally high. But if you look at the voter turnout in the city of Milwaukee compared to the 2016 election, it's the exact same. The county of Milwaukee, only 4 points higher this year. Statewide, only 6 points higher this year. So why is it that Donald Trump, who won Wisconsin in 2016, is complaining about high voter turnout now in 2020? So now we're addressing part two of Steve Cortes' implications of voter fraud in key battleground states, this time in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, where he's trying to say that the voter turnout in 2020 is so much higher than that of the voter turnout when Barack Obama was running.
It is really quite stunning how much Joe Biden outperformed Obama, but only in the places that mattered in battleground states.
The main figure he's focusing on here is the votes in 2012 compared to 2020, when you see this jump of about 80,000 votes. Now he's saying, how is this possible? The real story lies in the increase in the midterm election turnout. So before Donald Trump was elected in 2014, the turnout for the midterm elections was 156,000 people voted for Democrats. But you see that number jump to 256,000 in 2018. So this is a jump of 100,000 votes, which is greater than the increase that Steve Cortes is pointing to. So this is the Trump effect in play. This is what we've seen play out over the last 4 years when Donald Trump has really driven suburban voters into the arms of the Democratic Party. We see this massive voter turnout increase, and we see an increasing percentage of Democratic voters. Let's take a look at the 2014 midterm election turnout and the 2018 midterm election turnout. You go from 48% to 68%, which is about a 20-point jump. Compare that to the 2016 and 2020 election turnout. That's only a 10% jump. So, we have Steve here saying that this is a historic jump in voter turnout, that this is improbable, but is it really, considering that this is an election where you have tons of groups flooding Pennsylvania with money, trying to get out the vote? We know that this is the highest voter turnout in an election ever. This jump doesn't seem that improbable to me. So part 3 of Steve's video series is seemingly the most convincing. It's this bit about Biden-only ballots.
Biden-only ballots, meaning people who voted for Joe Biden, but then did not vote down ticket, even in places that had hotly contested races. For example, Georgia.
And how does he know this? It's not like he has access to every vote in Georgia. He's not reading how people voted. What he's doing is he's subtracting the number of votes for Senate from the number of votes for president. So for example, in 2020, he's saying that there are Biden-only ballots because 100,000 more people voted for Joe Biden in Georgia than the Georgia Democratic candidate for Senate. So he's saying that the vote this year is being stuffed by people who are only ticking off Joe Biden. How do we explain this? It's the fact that you can vote for a different party in the Senate races than in the presidential race. So it's very possible that 100,000 people voted for Joe Biden in the presidential race and then chose to support the Republican Senate candidate in the Senate race. Likewise, in 2016, it might be that people supported Hillary Clinton overwhelmingly for president, but also wanted to support the Republican Senate candidate in the Senate race. This doesn't make these Clinton-only ballots, and the fact that Donald Trump won Georgia in 2016 probably explains the fact that he didn't complain about Clinton-only ballots in 2016. Steve's final argument rests on this so-called undervote, which is when people go to vote and they only vote for president, they don't vote for Senate, they just tick off the president box and then they leave the voting booth. So we looked at the undervote percentages in the last few elections, and in 2008 the undervote was 4%. In 2016 the undervote was 6%, and then in 2020 the undervote was 1%. So the undervote was far lower in 2020 than it was in 2016. So here, Steve's whole argument is just blown apart. There was actually more participation in the Senate race this year than in past races. And, it also begs the question, if the Democrats rigged the presidential race for Joe Biden in 2020, why didn't they do it for the Democratic Senate races as well? So here we've got the exact numbers that Steve had on the board. He's got the rate of rejection of mail-in ballots in the New York primary compared to the PA general election, the Pennsylvania general election this year. And he's saying that in the New York primary, 21% of mail-in ballots were thrown out. So how could it be that the rate of rejection in Pennsylvania was only 0.03%?
So what happened? In Pennsylvania, the rejection rate of mailed-in ballots was only 0.03%. Okay, now that is 1/30th of the normal rate in the state of Pennsylvania. New York, right next door, when they went to large-scale mail-in voting for their primary, they had a rejection rate of 21%. That is 700 times higher than what we saw in Pennsylvania.
Well, this 21% figure isn't what it looks like. 20% of the mail-in ballots were misprinted. 20% of the mail-in ballots in the New York primary were misprinted and rejected. This was an absolute embarrassment. It was a blunder for the New York Board of Elections. So if you take that 20% out of this number, it becomes 1%. And 1% mail-in ballot rejection is actually the average for most elections. So the number one reason mail-in ballots are rejected is that they're not mailed in on time. But obviously this year we didn't have a regular election, and special exceptions were made for people to mail in their ballots late. Take this in account with the fact that people were making a particular push to get their ballots in. They emphasized the importance of this election. You see how more votes are coming in. You have more people using the mail-in ballot system. We're not talking about tens of thousands. We're talking about millions. And then you have a much lower rate of rejection. You have this exception up to 3 days after the election where ballots will be counted if they're mailed in. So mathematically speaking, that's going to severely drive down the rate of rejection in Pennsylvania. These are the 4 arguments that Steve Cortes is putting forward as to why this election was fraudulent. And Steve is saying this is all about the numbers. It's about the facts, not my own opinions.
And the serious numerical, not my opinion, numerical anomalies that demand more investigation.
But we've just shown you that he's clearly manipulating the numbers. He's clearly cherry-picking data to make his argument look right. And I'm not a Biden supporter. I didn't vote for Biden. I wouldn't even put it past the US government to fix elections. I mean, they do it all the time in other countries. But if these are your 4 arguments as to why this outcome is fraudulent, no matter how many times you recount, no matter how many lawsuits you file, no matter what you do, you're going to lose.